Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Amanda Hennessey, author of Your Guide to Public Speaking, Build Your Confidence, Find Your Voice, Inspire Your Audience. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Are you ready to get started?
I am ready.
All right, question number one. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Make an outline. This is a critical piece, which was a saving grace for me. I had been brainstorming in my mind, picturing my book for a number of years, and I then finally had the bandwidth to write it, and I started outlining, and then I was actually, in a wonderful moment of synchronicity, was approached by a publisher, Simon & Schuster, to write a book on public speaking. And in order for me to submit my proposal to them, I did have to submit a table of contents, an intro, and some writing samples for them to consider in order for us to go to contract. And that table of contents was the best thing ever. It went through a few different versions. I got feedback from clients, from friends, but it became my GPS. It really helped me to break down a big project with a very tight timeline into smaller pieces. So highly recommend having that outline. I didn't necessarily write the pieces in the order of the outline. I would each day look and say, what am I excited to write about today? And then I would attack that subject with vigor. So cannot stress enough, the outline is your friend.
And what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
In terms of the actual publishing process, I do feel that I was very fortunate to have been approached by someone who found me online and felt that I would be a good fit for the kind of book they wanted to write. So that was a really fortuitous and amazing experience for me. What I will say with that is that the timeline was their decision. And so from the first time I was approached by them to when I had to submit the whole manuscript to be edited was just under 4 months. So this, when I had seen other friends write books, the process looked like a marathon. When I was told what the deadline would be for the book I was going to write, I realized it was going to be a sprint. And so I would say endurance is a very important part of writing, whether it's a sprint or a marathon. And I know at times I got very tired, fried, kind of loopy. And luckily I would find inspirations. I was still meeting with clients, and that would inspire me to have ideas to write about in the book. But I would say, have those friends that encourage you, drink lots of water, eat snacks, get exercise if you can, and keep at it.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
First of all, I'd say that I have run an acting class business with my husband for many years, and also I have my public speaking business. And over the years, we've created community from this. So I did have those folks, and a few months before the book was released, I went public to them and reached out on social media and in newsletters, basically, surprise, I wrote a book, you could pre-order it. The publisher had encouraged me to keep the project under wraps until closer to the release date. And I think they didn't want people to get tired of hearing about the book before they could take action. And it was really fun to get a lot of responses from people in all different parts of my life who were then excited to read it. I wanted to really get the word out as much as I could, so I did also hire a publicist. And that was really helpful because this was a brand new world for me. And she wrote a press release and a Q&A and basically sent it to many, many media outlets. And that has been incredibly helpful, has done a lot of follow-up on that and gotten some great results. And also the publisher was generous and recorded 5 different videos in which I'm presenting public speaking tips, and those are professionally produced, and we're starting to release those now. So there's been a number of different strategies I've employed to get the word out. So that's my story.
So you mentioned you had a video series. So the publisher actually paid for a video production company to come and record you at an event, or how did that work?
Actually, what happened is they have an in-house production team, and so I wrote little scripts, each one having a certain tip, and I went to their location and brought a bunch of different outfits and did my makeup and shot it in-house. So does that explain that fully?
Yeah, so you went to their location, you did in-house, you did the recordings, and each of those was probably, what, like 5 or 10 minutes or a bit longer?
No, they're actually shorter.
Okay.
Attention span being what it is, they're between a minute and 2 minutes each. I'm excited in the future to do longer videos in a learning series, but these are nice short tips and strategies on some major points, like how to handle being the center of attention, what do I do with my nerves, that kind of thing.
Got it.
And so, yeah, they're little, I wouldn't say sound bites, they're deeper than that, but they each focus on a topic and get in and get out, and you get a sense of things.
Now, you also mentioned that you hired a publicist. So what advice would you give to our audience in regards to searching for the right publicist, realizing the investment that's involved, and also making sure that you get a proper return of investment?
Sure. I would say what I did is I Googled, and I also asked people that I knew who they had used. I think word of mouth is a great way to get the inside scoop on people. And then I made a number of calls, sent a number of emails, and saw who felt like a good fit in terms of our personalities and their excitement about my project, who was available, what their pricing was. And then I had to sit with it because, again, this was a pretty new world for me to be entering into. And I knew they could do all these things that I did not know how to do, nor did I have time for. So I was ready to make that investment. So I would say that's a good way to get information, talk about it with people, sort it out. If you have any friends who are publicists, it's not a bad idea to get their opinion. And I also read a lot of blogs about it and things like that. And I would say do all you can to support them and do what you can do yourself to get press yourself. Don't leave it all to them. And so when there were requests to write articles for recruiter.com, great, happy to do it. I think it's a matter of working with the request. Sometimes you're needed to do even more writing to have it get out into the world. And so I think being ready to be really flexible with that and being ready to go when you're needed. So I think having a really good attitude in that is really important, and to realize things take time and things take time to unfold. Sometimes things happen right away, but you got to be patient with it because you just never know when something's going to suddenly blossom.
Well, if you don't mind me asking too, you mentioned in regards to an investment. So would you mind sharing roughly what the investment is for a publicist?
I think it's probably different for so many different publicists, so I feel a little awkward about sharing that, to be honest.
Well, just share typically what range do you feel people should pay for? Because some people are going to think low end, some people are going to say high end. So don't necessarily tell us what you invested, but what do you feel is the amount, like the ballpark number that someone can be expected to invest in a publicist? Would that be better phrase for it?
I'll do my best.
That's fair.
To remember what this was all like. So people charge in different ways. Some people charge on a monthly basis. Some people charge per project. And so sometimes it's a little hard to compare the two. I was finding around, if we think of monthly, probably between $2,500, $3,500 a month. And some people really want to have a number of months before your book comes out to really get ready to launch. And then after that, to do all of the follow-up. So it may be a 4-month investment. And clearly different publishers are going to charge different publicists are going to charge more than that, depending on their experience. And there may be some that charge a bit less. I was tapping into, I was talking to people in markets such as Boston, New York City. I think one was maybe in Austin, Texas. So those markets are probably pretty pricey. There may be ones that are more affordable in other parts of the country. I don't know. So that's been my experience, but definitely do research in your area from the people that perhaps your contacts have.
Perfect. And thank you for sharing that, because we've had guests in the past that have talked about PR. And one of the things that I always like to dig into is what is the expectation for the investment? Because, I mean, I already knew it's not going to be something that's inexpensive. But what you realize, too, is you get what you pay for. And when you mentioned press releases, so as you know, there's a lot of services out there that, you know, you can sign up for, and they'll say, hey, we're going to submit your press release to all these different markets. Well, what happens is they put it in a giant email with a bunch of other press releases. It gets sent to media outlets, and that's it. They're considered junk mail. But when you're utilizing the Publicist that has those relationships, that has those connections with the Boston media, with New York, with Austin, then it's going to be a much higher probability that that press release is going to get to the right person. And most importantly, that person is going to have a connection with your publicist. Therefore, it's going to give you opportunities to do different types of media to help promote your book and to promote your brand.
Most definitely. It's like dealing with an acting agent. It's like all the relationships that they have are really to your benefit. And also in terms of the pitches that the publicist has done, really honing the pitch to the specific media outlet. So it's like, yes, definitely the press release went out with a copy of the book to maybe different 100 media outlets. And then some people simply got the press release, but then a lot of follow up with like, hey, how about an article on this topic? How about an article on this topic? Public speaking is really broad. So how do you do a wedding toast? How should you think about an interview? There's lots of different ways to use this topic to have me be an expert on it and write a particular article or speak to a certain topic. So I think finding a publicist who's really creative in terms of their approach is really important, because they're going to see the world through different eyes than you are. And I found it to be a really fascinating process. Yes.
Well, speaking of books, I'd like to ask, what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
My favorite book changes often. So I will say my favorite book of the moment is The Untethered Soul, The Journey Beyond Yourself by Michael A. Singer. And I learned so much from this book. It articulated a lot of things I have been contemplating, musing about in my own adventure of life. I would basically say my top takeaway is that we are not our emotions or our thoughts. They are, if we can observe our thoughts and feelings and experience them rather than overly identifying with them and getting really mired down in them, we're going to have so much more freedom and joy. And we then won't take ourselves or life too seriously, which I think is a good thing.
And for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote is the quote by Eleanor Roosevelt: "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." I think this is a really powerful statement, and your opinion about yourself matters a tremendous amount. So get clear on what it is and have compassion for yourself.
Well, Amanda, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
Thanks for asking. BostonPublicSpeaking.com or SanDiegoPublicSpeaking.com.
Well, Amanda, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate being on here today, Paul. Take care.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.